This is why local matters. So it's conversations on civic life and everyday leadership. The series explores the people, roles, and decisions that shape everyday life in our communities. And each conversation asks not only what our local leaders do, but why it matters. Public service and education to belonging and leadership. These interviews highlight how ordinary people make an extraordinary difference through local engagement. Natalie is on the Fairhaven Select Board. She was voted in this year, so she's a fairly newer member to the select board. Previously, you were on a regional school board. Is that correct?
Yes, the Wachusett Regional School District Committee was the full name. That was 5 towns in central Mass. I lived in Paxton, one of the smaller towns, and I was one of 2 representatives to that school committee.
I knew you were on a regional one, but I was like, I know I'm not going to remember the full name. What brought you into public service?
Um, that's an interesting question. I think what brought me in, and I don't know that I'm going to say this in the order of importance, but one was frustration.
Mm-hmm.
I could see what was going on. My kids at the time were in the school district, and it was a school district that I had grown up in. Not that I never left the town that I grew up in. I did. I left. I went and did other things, but then ended up coincidentally buying a house and raising my kids in this same little small town. Um, and it came down to we needed a new high school. This was a high school that served 5 towns, over 2,000 students at the time. The high school had not been physically improvements, no physical improvements had been made since the time that when I was in high school there, which was 25 years before. And I just got really frustrated with the inability for these 5 towns to move on an issue that was so important. It got voted down twice, and uh, the one of the local reps for school committee had a conflict of interest. I think she was serving on the Council on Aging as the director, so they said no, she couldn't be in the school committee anymore. So there was an opening. I put my name in, and I was appointed by the select board. Um, and then I think within a year, maybe 2 years, I think it was the second year, beginning of the second year, I had to be elected,
Mm-hmm.
right? My term came up. So I was reelected to this position. That was my first foray into public politics, town politics. Parts of it were very rewarding. We didn't get a new high school
Mm-hmm.
built, but we did get major renovation to the existing structure on the same property. So much so that it was unrecognizable when it was finished.
Nice.
Just brought it up to state of the art. It was fantastic. So we did get that voted in, and I worked very hard to make that happen. So some things were very rewarding. I offer that as one example.
Yep.
Some things were very frustrating and were very unpleasant, shall we say. I did become vice chair of that school committee. I served as chair of the finance committee, and there were some meetings there that were very unpleasant. I had to be escorted to my car after these meetings by police because there were threats made against me. And this is before social media, right? This is long enough ago
Social
that it's
media
before.
keeps coming up here.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I was on a virtual mentoring session for women in municipal government earlier today, and that came up there as well. Um, anyway, so there were parts that were very unpleasant. When my term came up again, I decided not to run because I had issues going on in my personal life. My mother was dying of cancer,
Mm.
and I couldn't take the time away from her to do what needed to be done, so I didn't run again. Um, so that was my first foray into it. So I guess in that instance, it was out of frustration that I got involved.
Yep.
This time, had dipped my big toe into it a little bit by getting involved in the historical commission. I was appointed by the select board several years ago and got involved in that. Um, and it wasn't like I woke up one morning and said, "Oh, I think I'm going to run for select board." Uh, other people came to me and
Mhm.
asked. Um, and, I was very flattered that people thought maybe I should have been more nervous about it. Um, I was flattered that people thought of me that I would be a good candidate. And I took as you know, I took a good amount of time to really think
Mhm.
about it and talk to a lot of people, my husband, other folks, people I respect, both locally and, in my wider sphere of folks, and decided that I would do it. And what it came down to for me in making that decision was I was so frustrated by what I saw going on at the federal level and the national level in
Mhm.
politics that it just, it was like a little voice in my head that kept saying, all politics is local. And I thought if I could be part of a solution to improving things locally, then I had a duty to at least try.
Yeah.
That was a
That
really long answer.
No, that was a great answer. I think those are the things that I think people need to hear, that like the good, the bad, and also, and something like I'm still trying to learn in my life, like the balance, like the priorities. You had a personal matter going on, and you had to step behind, and that's not step behind, step back, and that is not a bad thing. Like, if you can't give your attention where it needs it, like I think that's a honorable thing to do, because
Well,
I'm
thank you.
still trying to
It
figure
did
that
it did
out.
have a way of bringing to light what my priorities should be.
Yeah.
And I will say that at this point in my life, when folks came to me as far as running for select board, um, things seemed to be aligned, right? I was no longer working full time. My kids are grown and fully fledged and on their own, and um, it was something that I had time and I had the energy to be able to address.
Select board was a like the timing is right and I have the time and space for it. The school. How old were your kids when you were doing the school committee?
They were both in, I think when I started, my oldest was in 10th grade, my youngest was in 8th grade.
Yep.
Um, they were hugely relieved that we had different last names. So when I got divorced, I went back to my maiden name. So Mello is my birth name.
Yep.
Um, they had the name of their dad, which was certainly appropriate.
Okay.
But so, it was bad enough that they had some teachers who knew me from when I was in school. But at least when my name was published in the newspapers and all that, as far as it was a different last name. So
What I was thinking with that is the, different stages of life. When you're a mother. I have three kids. They're 12, 10, and 4, as you know. And I think my priorities when my 12-year-old was born are incredibly different than when my 4-year-old was born, or even, um, you know, while I was pregnant with her, was when I got appointed myself in my first position on planning board. And I found out about 3 weeks later that I was pregnant. And I was like, oh God, is this the right time? And I was like, well, you know what? This is really important. Like, it's important to me right now. It was a similar situation of like, I want to have an impact of where I live. I want my kids to grow up in a place that, like, I can be proud to have helped. Like, I want things better for, in general. I have my utopian paradise dreams that I would bring them back down to reality. But I think those things are different and changed, and we change. And I think like changing roles and what you take on or not take on given where you're at in life is something that is important for people to hear, because I think there's an expectation of you have to have everything perfectly aligned in order to do the thing. And sometimes that just doesn't, it's not it's not what happens.
Right.
um,
It reminds me, many, many years ago, I went and visited my brother and sister-in-law out in San Diego, and my oldest was a toddler. And I said, "So what are you guys waiting for?" "Oh, we're waiting for the perfect time to have kids." I said, "Well, you're never going to have them then. There's
yeah.
never a perfect time.
Yes.
Something always comes up." The other thing I wanted to mention too is you're absolutely right. Your priorities change, where you are in life changes. Part of my reasoning for doing it back when I was at school committee was to be an example to my kids, to try to make a positive influence on their experience of high school. Unfortunately, my oldest never experienced the new high school. My youngest did
Mm.
a little, I think, during his senior year. But this time around, I have six granddaughters. And it's really important for me as a woman to be a positive role model for them and to show them that they can make a difference. So
Yep.
that was part of my motivation as well.
Being a woman in leadership is an evolving thing, and I think in my experience in the last 6 years, like I feel like I've seen quite a bit of change as far as women's roles and their leadership. How did you notice a change from when you served on that school committee board to currently? Like, do you think it's a better atmosphere for women? Does it feel the same?
That's another interesting question. So when I was on school committee, I think we had 22. I don't know. It was a large board.
Okay.
Um, but there were more women than men. So it didn't feel very gendered at all. I
Okay.
mean, the superintendent was a man. Um, the chair of the school committee was a man. Uh, but otherwise, it didn't seem like there was a lot of what's the right word? Gender just didn't seem to be an issue,
Okay.
right? On the select board, I'm only the third woman to serve on the select board ever in this town. Um, I do feel I do feel that my identity as a woman does have an impact in that service. I think, well, I think the way that I'm treated by some folks in the public
Mm-hmm.
when they come to public comment and will make disparaging comments about me is because of their attitudes towards women, and the fact that, quite frankly, they're not all that happy that I was elected. Um, so I think that's part of it. That's been made very, very clear, particularly when I watch these particular people and see how they treat other women. There's definitely a pattern there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just in the fact that one of my colleagues on the select board doesn't do it as much anymore, but every now and then will do it. The fact that he will reach over and physically poke me during a meeting
Hmm.
to get my attention, or I find that a little disconcerting. I don't think he would poke a male colleague.
Something that I respect a lot of you that other people I have heard in public comment or conversations is that you are very direct, and you say, you know you're not afraid to say what you need to say, and that can come off as she is forceful, or I forgot what the word that was
Bitchy,
used. Huh?
bitchy.
Yeah, that one too. But when a man does the same thing, it's not spoken about at all. And
It's expected.
I love to question people on that. Like, is it the fact that Natalie said it, or is it what she said? Like, because there's a difference there. And I don't think enough people get challenged on that question, because you generally just receive and okay, 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 yeah, I get that. But I think, I had that experience in a conversation with someone where I was like, you know what, I love that she does that. Like she is expressing exactly what she needs to express, and we all should do that. And why is it a problem that she said it? Do you not like what it was? And well, no, no, no. I'm not disagreeing with what she said. It's how she said it, and it was kind of this like, well, why does it? Why does it? What is the how there? Like if the select board member next to her said it, would you still be saying that? Because generally we find that authoritative men are a good thing in this role. So why is this authoritative woman in this role being disparaged? Like it's a something that I've noticed watching, and something that I'm like, we need to work on that. Like as a society, we need to work on that.
Well, number one, I mean, as a person to whom the word integrity is very important, um, I try to live a life of integrity. So if I feel a way, I will express that. Um, because I think they go hand in hand. But what's interesting to me is that I often feel like I am holding back. Even though I'm being direct and I'm saying something, I am, really being cautious about what I say and how I say it, precisely because of what
Hmm.
you just brought up. So the fact that it's still rubbing people the wrong way, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. It's
I just can't figure that.
I know maybe 20 years from now we won't be saying it if we all keep doing it, but I think if we keep adjusting who we are for other people, like we're a little bit enabling the problem, and I'm still
Hmm.
working on that myself because I don't ever want people to feel uncomfortable with what I'm saying, but sometimes I don't say exactly what I want either because I'm trying to protect their feelings instead of my
Yep.
own. Could you tell me a little bit about both roles? So, like, what a school committee does and select board and what they do.
So regional school committee is just like any other school committee, right? They are the elected body that oversees the superintendent of schools in that district. So in my particular instance, 5 towns. Uh, each town had elected representatives to the school committee, and depending on the size of the town, depended on how many representatives they had.
Okay.
Uh, so the 5 towns were Holden, Paxton, Rutland, Princeton, and Sterling. Holden was the largest of those towns. Actually, I think they were about the size of Fairhaven, about 16,000. So they had uh, 5 members on the school committee. Uh, Paxton and Princeton each had 2. I think Rutland at the time had 3, and I'm missing Sterling, I think, had 3. Maybe Rutland had 4. Rutland was growing by
Yeah,
leaps and bounds. So anyway, so there was, this different, and my math may not add up, but there was, and it was a long
that's all
time
right.
ago. What can I say?
Based
So,
by based by
our
population.
right. So our role as the reps from our town was to represent our town as best we could on this regional school committee, because the school district was made up of 5 towns, and was ultimately responsible for K to 12 education. We had one regional high school, but each town had their own elementary and middle schools. And sometimes they were combined. In Paxton, we had one school building that was K to 8.
Okay.
In other towns, they had separate middle schools, and like in Holden, they had 3 elementary schools, I believe, and 2 middle schools. Anyway, right? So just like any school committee, we were there to oversee the superintendent. We were there to create and submit a budget to support the school district. We were there to advocate on behalf of education, and you know, not surprisingly, we had to fight for every dollar we ever got for
Yep.
education. One thing that I've always found very frustrating is this notion that it's us against them, the school committee
Yes.
versus the town. And I think what people forget or maybe they were never taught this. Somehow I got this lesson growing up, but I think what people forget if they ever were taught this is that part of a democracy is funding education,
Mm-hmm.
public education. We have a duty to provide high quality public education to our students. And so that by necessity, that should not be an us versus them
Yeah.
situation. Um,
We had
so, I mean, that's what we did. We were the ones who, the school committee was the one who determined who was hired as superintendent. We were the ones who while I was there, we had a superintendent stepping down, so we were ahead of
Yep.
the search, uh, creating and supporting the budget. We did get that school building the high school project moving forward. We were responsible for that. Um, so the same things that happen in a school district.
What do you think is something that people believe a school committee does that maybe it doesn't, or vice versa? Like there's something that, which I think you just covered, like what school committee does that people may not realize.
I think one thing that people think school committee gets involved in, which they don't, is the day-to-day goings on and operations of a school district.
Yeah.
School committee has no say in who gets hired or who gets fired within a school,
Yep.
right? That is the job of the superintendent. The only person that the school committee hires and fires and who reports to the school committee is the superintendent. Everything below that
Mm-hmm.
superintendent is the responsibility of the superintendent. So I think there's that uh, misconception, if you will, or
Yes.
misperception
S-
that, oh, I'll go complain to school committee about my kid being bullied at school, or I don't like the teacher that my kid was assigned, so I'm going to go to school committee. That's not a school committee issue.
Yeah.
That's a district issue that needs to be dealt with by district administration.
Yep. In government in general, is that there is a separation between the departments and the boards. Like the
Yep,
roles are different, the missions are different, and knowing um, understanding where those are is something that we need to talk about more, because I think there's a lot of people that don't quite understand the boards are different from the day to day. Like
yep, yep.
the, I fault no town or city employee who wants to bring business into town, because that is absolutely what they're meant. Like that, the revenue is like that's their thing. Um, Elected officials are to protect what people have voted for.
Right.
So our mission's a little different, and a school committee sounds pretty similar to that. It's, there's a difference between what happens in the school versus outside. I have totally been a person to go to the school committee about a thing that isn't exactly their role. In that case, I went because I was not being heard at the school. And I think, that's a communications thing that is probably going to come up in this podcast quite a bit, about people being heard. And, what are you supposed to do when you're not heard?
Mm.
And how, public comment time and more openness would make things a lot better. So for select board, what's your take on the role?
We are responsible for policies and governing. And similar to school committee, right? We don't hire the town employees. The only town employee that the select board hires is the town administrator.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody else in town government has somebody that they report to, but it's not the select board.
Yep.
Only the town administrator reports to the select
Yeah,
board.
you guys get to okay the hire, but you're not actually hiring. Is that correct?
I don't even know that we okay the hire, right? I mean,
I
I'm
think
well, I'm trying to think if
people.
anybody other, so we did hire the latest town administrator, right?
Yes, and I
Uh,
don't think you guys have hired anybody else actually since you've been on the board. Generally,
right. So we'll
the
see. So
the
we'll
town
see, right?
administrator.
Yeah. One of the things that to be curious is it's not really straightforward there's not an intuitive structure
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense to me in town government, and whether it's just Fairhaven or if it's town government in general, because this is my first experience,
Yeah.
in select board, but it's things seem to be a little convoluted. Like I don't quite understand why the BPW oversees the DPW and
Oh,
why
that's
the
very R
chair,
specific.
right, that's specific to Fairhaven, but
Yeah.
why the chair of the Board of Public Works is the superintendent of public works. That seems, and I'm not casting any
Yeah.
shade on who those people are,
Although it was, yeah, it was voted on like 70 years ago or something.
right. And
But yeah.
I think it needs to be looked at again, just to
Yeah.
make sure that's the right fit for the town. 'Cause
Well,
that.
well, government on all levels, like government is run by living documents. So
Yep,
those documents should absolutely be looked at and changed when needed because society
periodically, that's
changed.
right.
I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to look at those things. Why did we do it, or why are we doing it that way? And is that still the best way? Because sometimes what we used to do is not working, and we need to change, and we all have to be a little better about accepting, I think, that.
People who are active in voting
Yep.
in local politics have made their voices known and their view known, that the majority of folks who vote are interested in seeing progress and seeing things move
Yeah,
in a
I would agree.
in a forward way, because I think it's, what I took from the last election is, when there were many incumbents and many people who were, used to doing it the old way and the way that it had been done for, a
Ever.
long time, those folks were not reelected. New
Yep.
voices, new perspectives, myself included, were voted. And so I think that's a serious lesson that we need to keep in mind, is that, things can't be done the same way, the same old way, just because they were always done that way. Because
Yeah.
guess what? There are new folks in town, and sometimes there are better ways of doing things. Not
Yeah.
always,
Well,
but sometimes.
traditions are a wonderful thing when they have meaning. And I
Yep.
think in some cases, our government is almost more of a tradition than something meaningful. And I think that's kind of where this podcast idea comes from, is that, I'm really proud of my town because we have high voter turnout at about
Ah,
18% for local, but that means that, you know, 82% of our registered voters aren't voting. And what blocks them from voting? Like, what's the barrier? Is it the election day itself, or is there something else happening? And
the fact that the election was held on a Monday instead of a Tuesday, like every other election, that the polls didn't open till 10 when they opened earlier. Those are all barriers. So it'll be
yep,
interesting to see in June, because we moved it later.
yep.
We said, let's do it on a Tuesday. And we said, let's open up the polls the same hours as every other election. So hopefully we will see some changes.
There are people who want to see and hear more people when it comes to elections. I mean, I don't want an election where 20% of people go out and vote. We want people to be involved with government and really feel heard. Well, what can we do to help that happen? And I'm happy to say our town has moved our election day, and I hope that shows in our next local election.
You and me both, sister.
Yeah. And I hope, this podcast, and I hope other people, like, I don't know how to have the conversations in like a broad way, but I hope that more people do. I would like to hear one thing that you wish still existed that doesn't anymore, like a pastime event or a nostalgia thing that you're like, man, I wish that was still around, and kind of leave you with the thought of, why can't it be? So I'll give you an example. I have such a strong nostalgic love for old school PTO nights where we would make crafts that you could give to your family. And I wish that those were still around. So what I did when I was on the PTO in my daughter's school was bring those events back. Because I'm like, why can't they happen? And it's, it was like, well, somebody wasn't willing to do it. Like a Lorax moment, right? Like it won't happen if someone doesn't care. So I think there's other things I hear about with block parties, like those kind of things that, like, why don't they happen? And can you make it happen, right? I don't expect you to open a drive-in theater by any means, but, like, what's in it?
I'm not sure the world needs drive-in theaters to come back.
I've experienced them. I don't even know what they're like.
Oh, well, sometime when we're not on a podcast, I'll tell you what my experience is like. So I remember as a kid, going sledding. Sledding was a huge community event, right? Every family had a toboggan.
Yep.
We happen to have a great hill in the center of town, and when it snowed, and you're way too young to remember this, but the blizzard of '78, where we had no school for 2 weeks. I think I was a sophomore in high school.
I won't say where I was then.
Yeah, you were probably not even in Euro. We had, I think, like 10 days where there was no school. So we would every day we spent tobogganing, and then in the evening, everybody would go home in the meantime, put their stuff in the dryer to dry it all out, and then go back up, and parents would come, right? So it was like this multi-generational where there were adults who were there were kids, there were high school kids, there were little kids, and it was just fun. And people got together. Now, that that doesn't happen down here because we don't have the snow.
We don't have the snow here, but we have water and plastic bags, and you can totally go water sledding.
The hell is water sledding?
What are those? The slip and slide?
Oh yeah, we used to have slip and slides when we were kids.
Slip and slide, but you do it up on a hill instead of a flat surface, and you just use a trash bag for under you. And the two trash bags together and being wet causes like trajectory.
Yeah, because actually, when my kids were little, their dad brought home like this big long roll of black plastic that was like heavy duty that you could roll up and save. Anyway, in the summer, we would do that. We had a slight incline from our yard to the neighbors, and we would just put the hose on it, and the kids would have a blast.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally love to like have fake snow or like snow machines come and make snow for sledding. It's that kind of experience that I'm like, well, okay, it's not that one, but what's like a new one that we can do? And I think that's maybe where I was going with that question is like.
Yeah, but I do think that Fairhaven has made some strides towards doing more community things that get more people from all ages involved, like the Harbor Fest that have been happening this past summer have been fantastic.
I really like to hear those special things about people and like what they really, those special things, and go like, okay, like how can we make that one happen? Or
I can figure out how to make it snow. I'll let you know.
Yeah, no, I think water slide's your best option. So that is our time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jessica, and good luck with the podcast.
Thank you.